Gurave Gaurachandrai Radhikaya Tadale Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktai Tad Bhaktai Namo Namah. So, good morning and greetings from New Jersey. This time I'm here at Namrasa Prabhu's and Tulsi's house for the last 2 or 3 days. Yeah. And we have been, as you know, last week in Michigan. That's why we were not able to connect for our last ISTAGOSTHI, unfortunately, but fortunately at the same time, because we had very nice experience there with the devotees. For those of you who were able to listen to some of our gatherings in our retreat on reclaiming our ideals, it has been a very refreshing, inspiring, empowering, supportive environment. So very beautiful. And now in New Jersey, yesterday I had a very interesting program at the church, a local church here, where we had some interfaith conversation. So it has been very appreciated. People was very happy and inspired as I was. So beautiful. Just coming 2 minutes ago, right on time for the lecture, because I spent the night in the house of someone else, which is a friend of us also, who is a pastor actually, who organized the meeting. And we were talking even about some potential future programs in terms of some interfaith parikram to the Dham and some other possibilities we are exploring. So let's see what comes out of that. So yeah, very happy to be back with all of you. If I forget, let me tell you this now, and I'll try to remember at the end of our meeting. Next Saturday, and sorry to start with tragic news, but next Saturday I won't be able to do ISTAGOSTHI again, unfortunately, because there will be Rath Yatra here in New York, and I have been invited. So I'll be there. Give me that chance, please. But after that, I promise we will have ISTAGOSTHI non-stop for the whole month of June and so on and so forth. So just one more chance. So basically those are the tragic news. No need to get further alarmed in case I forgot. So that's it. Let's begin. If we have any questions today, I'm seeing 3 raised hands, so we can start there. With Kevin first, and then Pranada, then Rasangi, and so on and so forth. So, Kevin, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. Good morning. It's good to see you and everyone. I am continuing with my theme of slowing down to better understand these phrases that are used all over the place within scriptures and Prabhupada's purports, and so I've found some more, but they're basic, and so hopefully they will require very short answers, because I don't want to take up people's times who are further along the path. But I just have some confusion sometimes when I get in my mind with these words. You're a word person, Maharaj, so I think you can understand sometimes.
Yeah.
So the one that's in my spinning mind right now is the phrase devotional service.
Okay.
Or perhaps more broadly, Prabhupada uses the phrase devotional service in Krishna consciousness. He says devotional service in Krishna consciousness is the right course of action.
Okay.
So when I hear devotional service, I know is a huge topic, and there's lots written on that. But then this phrase Krishna consciousness, as much as I'm embarrassed to say, when I know what Krishna means, I know what consciousness means. When I put the two together, I don't know if that's actually, enough to hold the richness what I feel is being conveyed there. So I'm wondering if you can maybe speak about that or devotional service. Take your pick. Both are kind of swirling around in my head.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation, and yeah, I appreciate your sincerity also. Basically saying, I'm not so sure what Christian consciousness means. No, in one sense, no, and I agree. It's great. I mean, what do we mean by the word? Because again, it can become such a used phrase that it can lose meaning basically, or it can just mean the most superficial possible interpretation of that. That happens with when we use a word many times. Generally, it tends toward its most uh, possible superficial meaning. It doesn't mean it's an inaccurate meaning, but it loses depth and nuance by being used so much. And in fact, in our retreat in Michigan, we talked quite a lot about that in terms of reclaiming our ideals. We talked about, I don't know, surrender or sankirtan or sadhu sangha. And the point is, what do we mean by that? Because we use the word every day, but what do we mean by that? Are we getting the full accurate picture, which is never full? I mean, full enough. It can always get fuller. So I appreciate your point on inviting us to reflect on what do we mean by both Krishna consciousness and devotional service, which are, yeah, as you mentioned, probably along with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, probably these three are the three main invoked expressions by Srila Prabhupada, right? Like trademark expressions. No? Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, devotional service, Krishna consciousness. So yeah, we need to over and over again go around this. What does this mean actually? So it doesn't just mean a one-liner to fill in, so to say, and to again say the proper expression to fit in, to fill in or to fit in. So what does it mean? In one sense, I will say that in one sense, both of them are synonymous. No, in one sense, devotional service means Krishna consciousness. Although, as you mentioned, Prabhupada will say devotional service in Krishna consciousness, which is a way of further clarifying what devotional service is. It's like if I say a bona fide guru, actually, a real guru is bona fide. So I shouldn't need to say bona fide guru, but I'm just saying it in case to clarify, because in the name of being guru, some other things may happen. So in the same way, in the name of devotional service, some other things may happen. So then we may say devotional service in Krishna consciousness. But technically speaking, there is no devotional service without Krishna consciousness, no? So to say. So in one sense, both of them are synonymous. Both of them could be renderings of bhakti, of the Sanskrit term bhakti, basically. No? Bhakti, Prabhupada translates bhakti as, or bhakti yoga, if you want to put it that way, as devotional service. So it's interesting. It's an interesting expression that I really like, because it speaks about devotion and service. So it kind of includes both the emotional part, the feeling, devotion, and service in terms of action. No, like if I love you, I will serve you. So to say, I will express my inner feelings for you in terms of a particular action. So it translates into action. So to say, like trying to make these two in a different way, it reminds me how Richard Rohr calls his center for action and contemplation. That you have action and you have contemplation or inner life. So devotional service also entails these two dynamics. No, devotion, inner culture, love for God, and this inner connection and relationship, communion with the divine, and service. No, like the natural way to reciprocate to God's unconditional love, to the mercy, to the shelter that is coming, translates into service to God, to everyone else in connection to God, and so on and so forth. So, and again, Krishna consciousness in that connection means to be conscious of Krishna. No? Krishna will say, of course, there are many statements in the scriptures. Krishna in the Gita will say, Man mana, always think of me, or smartavya satatam Vishnu, or vishmartavya, all the rules, sarvangulay sarvavidhi niseda shuretayore bakinkara, all the purpose of all rules and regulations are to think always about God. And again, think always about God means not so much like a concentration effort. Okay, I will think always about God, but fall in love with God, and you will see traces of Him everywhere, breadcrumbs everywhere, so to say. That's the ultimate idea. How you can always think about someone. Well, you have if you are madly in love with someone, that's how it works, and that's a gradual process, of course, right? So Krishna consciousness is basically that. Srila Prabhupada, interestingly, once he said that his inspiration for the term Krishna consciousness came from one verse composed by Rupa Goswami, which mostly is related to how it appears in Bhakti in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Krishna-bhakti rasa bhavitamati kriyatam yadi kutopi labhyate tatra laulimapi kalam mulyam janma koti sukritarna labhyate. Which basically is a verse speaking about Krishna bhakti rasa, like the highest possible expression of divine love, and how to get that you have to pay that in coins of divine greed, and no matter how pious actions you made on a material level is not something that you will acquire by just being a good person, so to say, like correct, socially pure, but in terms of inner longing. So he says, inspired on that verse, I'm naming my movement Krishna consciousness. So that's interesting, because again, that's shed further like, what's Krishna consciousness? No, it's a way of falling in love with God, developing natural, intense longing for the divine in connection to Him, which is not considering a performative side, like you have to be pure and perfect and do everything in a very superhuman way, so to say. So God loves you, but you have to, develop this wonder and this attraction that naturally will fuel your orientation, your approach to the divine. So that's Krishna consciousness, probably I'll say. That's the inspiration for that. And also another way of connecting the term Krishna consciousness is, of course, with the name of Mahaprabhu that he received as a sannyasi, Krishna Chaitanya. No? Chaitanya means consciousness. So another way of understanding Krishna consciousness means this is the movement of Sri Chaitanya. Krishna consciousness means the inauguration of Mahaprabhu's heart in the form of a movement, in the form of the Sankirtan. As we always say there's a movement, but all that movement started by some movement in Mahaprabhu's heart. Something was moving so deeply in his heart that made him move in a certain way and dance and celebrate. And that movement moved other hearts, which in turn eventually gave shape to all those series of movements. And now we call that the Krishna conscious movement. But everything began with the movement in Mahaprabhu's heart. So we make full circle going back to this idea of Krishna consciousness or devotional term is first devotional. Something has to be moving in your heart in terms of devotion and love. And that movement will create the other movements, the action, the service, no? Devotional, service. Now, both are a movement. Devotion is moving my heart, and that takes me to move in the way of expressing my love in the term of service, in the terms of certain particular actions. So that's what's coming in my mind now. Maybe there are a bunch of scattered thoughts. I'm not just saying one single thing. but yeah, at the end, again, just to sum up, both devotional service and Krishna consciousness for me are speaking about the same thing, about learning to fall in love with the divine in a healthy, sustainable way, voluntary way, full of wonder and awe. And when that's going on, happening in the correct way, naturally we become more and more conscious of that. We start to find God's presence everywhere, and we feel naturally inspired to reciprocate accordingly, not to all that has come to us in the form of service. So I don't know if that helps, Kevin, some way or another.
Yeah, immensely. Thank you so much, particularly for bringing out the heart aspect and the love.
Okay.
That was wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah. At the end, it's all about that. No, it's all about love. If you want, I don't want to sound reductionistic, but today during breakfast, we were talking with Scarlett, she's the pastor that invited me yesterday to give the sermon at her church, and so we were having breakfast with her. and her husband, and Dina Bandhu, a friend of mine, and me, and they were sharing, yeah, how sometimes in the church they get in discussions about minutia and details and specificity, but they lose sight of how the very foundation and the main theme of the whole Bible and Christian tradition is love. No? So I could resonate with that and say, well, we have our own version of that as well. Our own version of how love is the overarching theme, and our own version of how of we getting distracted from that and start to fight and have conflicts and getting entangled in diversity without having established the proper common foundation that we all share as members of the same tradition, and that we even share with other traditions as well. So yeah, I think we need to emphasize and understand, of course, love properly, and on that foundation, diversity, as we say, always becomes an ornament. So everything can flourish and express itself in its proper light, right? So thank you for bringing up the theme. It's important that, yeah, we spend some time revisiting each one of these crucial concepts. Thank you. So next raised hand is Pranada from Alachua. So please, Pranada, you can unmute yourself.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Nice to see you. Dandava.
Boy, I'm kind of excited to hear that you were invited to New York Rath Yatra.
Yeah. Anyhow,
that'll be an interesting experience. Hare Krishna.
I'm sure. Yeah.
It's a nice festival.
Yeah, I didn't. I mean, originally I didn't know the festival was on that day. So my plane was, I was leaving New Jersey exactly at the same day and time that the festival was starting. So I know it sounded a little bit like I'm leaving at the moment you are starting your festival, but I didn't know about the festival. So when I came to know about it, I was able to change my flight one day after, paying some extra thing, but small. So yeah, I'll be there, open to whatever Jagannath wants
Fifth
to
Avenue,
reveal.
very powerful festival for Prabhupada. He felt it was such a confirmation of his work that he had come to New York 10 years earlier, and then in 1976 he was able to take Jagannath down, the Lord of the Universe, down Fifth Avenue.
That was the first one done in New York, 76.
Yes.
Okay.
And Jayananda had wanted that. In fact, he started the first Rath Yatra in Los Angeles, was the year that he passed away.
Remember the Nagaras? We talked with him about that in detail. Yeah, that was a nice conversation. That was a highlight. Yeah.
Yeah. Hare Krishna. So I'm reading in the fourth canto of the Bhagavatam, and this is talks between Narada and King Prachinabarhi. And Prabhupada in his purport is making a point that I'm not quite sure I understand, although
which verse you are referring to specifically?
I'm talking chapter 29, verse 69. And he kind of has like some train of thought in the purport, kind of coming off the translation, but I think he's saying something that I'm trying to understand, which I think is important. Let me just read a couple of lines. It's in the first paragraph. He says, when a person is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, his stockpile of material desires is minimized. Indeed, the desires no longer fructify in the form of gross bodies. Instead, the stockpile of desires becomes visible on the mental platform by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So I want to read just two more sentences, but this is telling me something like, as you advance in Krishna consciousness, the material desires are reduced, and therefore you won't get a material body. And instead of getting a material body, you're going to see your subtle desires. They're going to be shown to you in the mind. So part of my question is like, then what are we supposed to do then when we see the material desires in our mind? But let me just read a little bit further in the following paragraph, the third paragraph.
Yeah.
Okay, no living entity is free from the cycle of birth and death unless he takes to Krishna consciousness. Therefore, in this verse, it is clearly stated, Savaika Nishte, Satvaika Nishte, that when one is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, in one stroke he is freed of past and future mental desires. Then, by the grace of the Supreme Lord, everything becomes simultaneously manifest within the mind. So again, he seems to be saying that you're going to be shown the things. And I'm thinking, we're going to be shown this to work on it. Or is it just by the act of being shown it, we're aware of it and releasing it? Can you have any comment about these statements?
Okay. Thank you for that. It's interesting that you quote that specific verse. That's why I ask, because always when it comes to some particular verse or comment in the context of a verse, I always like to know the bigger picture, the context, why, which context that's being said, and so on and so forth. So this is a verse that I'm writing a book now, as you know, and I've quoted that verse there recently, because it's a verse that also says, just to mention for a moment, because it's in connection to what you're asking also, that mentions that well, I'll read Prabhupada's translation. I have it here. It says Krishna consciousness means, and we were just talking about Krishna. What does Krishna consciousness mean? So here goes another definition of it. Krishna consciousness means constantly associating with the personality of Godhead in such a mental state that the devotee can observe the cosmic manifestation exactly as the Supreme Personality of Godhead does. So that's, for me, of course, some other things I say, but I like to stop there because I really appreciate that idea. Like, in other words, it's saying you have to look at the world through the eyes of God, no? To the glance of God, how Krishna is glancing at matter, how Krishna is seeing this world. And you have to do tadatmya, so to say, empathize and attain sameness with the way God is looking at everything. And there, I remember I quoted in Radical Personalism, and I'm not going on a tangent, but it's connected. I don't have the exact quote here right with me, but I read I quote some commentary of Srila Prabhupada to Bhagavad Gita, and there he's mentioning that for Krishna, I mean, from Krishna's perspective, there's no difference between material and spiritual, no? Which is a very interesting idea, because generally we make the difference, and I understand there's place for doing that, but but also at the same time, if we follow the instruction of the Bhagavatam here, we are to see everything, or to see the world at least how in the way Krishna does. So we are to start to see, to not make that much difference in one sense between matter and spirit. I mean, we make a difference, there's an ontological difference, but sometimes we make the difference too big. We create lots of an obvious between the two instead of seeing the relatedness and the connection. So that to begin with, and going back to your question, because again, it's related, and I'm also, I have here the purport of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and he's saying, I don't know, probably you went there as well, but I like to mention that in connection to what Prabhupada is saying, because let's keep in mind that big part of Prabhupada's commentaries on the Bhagavatam are based on Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentaries, as he based his commentary on the Gita and Baladev Vidyabhushan's commentary, and I think that's also part of the hermeneutics of keeping in mind that background. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, everyone sees all the things in a particular order. Sometimes there is simultaneous observation of everything. When the mind is constantly situated in Suddha Sattva, because the word Sattva is in this verse, but it refers to Suddha Sattva, situated next to the Lord, the devotee may see the universe directly, just as the Lord sees it by his will, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of the main context and the main statement of the verse. So I like to make that clear. Just whatever is said in that context in relation to this verse is tied to that original main point. And so in relation to your question and to Prabhupada's presenting this idea of how the desires, material desire, no longer fructify because of bhakti, we know that there are many statements in the Bhagavatam about how bhakti can uproot karma in all these stages, no? Even in aparabdha karma, prarabdha karma, different forms can be completely uprooted or spiritualized, if you will, because you can say, okay, by prarabdha karma or manifest karma, I have this particular body, this particular, I don't know, mental disposition, this particular nature. But bhakti can enter and spiritualize everything else, all that. No? It's not necessarily uprooted. You still have this body, you still have this mental disposition, but it can be spiritualized. So that's clear, I will say. The main question is, like you mentioned, what does Prabhupada mean when he says, the stockpile of desires become visible on the mental platform by the grace of this personality of Godhead? I will say, of course, we don't have Prabhupada next to us to ask him, like, literally, what you literally actually meant there. I can say a few things. And again, it's my reading and opinion on that. I don't want to sound absolutistic here, like this is what he meant. But from the context, and again, considering what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur mentions, is a devotee on that platform may have, he says, he sees the universe directly as Krishna does. No? Krishna also says that. So the stockpile of desires become visible. That can be taken. One option is not necessarily talking about your desires, but it's talking about just like a conglomerate of that subtle realm, so to say, that you are seeing that from that perspective. No, like you start to see things as they are, so they can really understand matter for what it is. You can understand the subtle realm where different desires are there. So that's one more macrocosmic interpretation, so to say, of these words in my view. Because again, Prabhupada is saying the stockpile of desires become visible on the mental platform. He's not saying your own desires, you see them, but it's more like a generic description. So by the grace of Krishna, you can have a clear, how to say, we acquire a clear, accurate, unfiltered understanding of what that realm means, actually. You know, what's the realm of desires? The stockpile, like the conglomerate. I don't want to say the collective unconscious, but I can say it. Why not? Like one gets a clearer, like, grasping of all these different layers of reality, Om Bhurbhuvah Swaha, and so on. And another way of taking on a more microcosmic level, like on our own desires, on our own journey, in connection to your question, I will say it's, yeah, we gain a clearer picture of desires that we have that we may not have had a clear picture before. Or in connection to this, we see them as material desires. Well, before we may not have seen them as material desires. We have seen them like, okay, this is me, or something like that, right? This is my nature and my inspiration and my soul expressing itself. And somehow you realize, no, that's not related to the Atma and to the function of the Atma in connection to the center, but is actually a, how to say, a dualistic misreading of reality, where I see myself as independent, and on that foundation I'm having these desires to satisfy some ulterior motives. So yeah, that's not in the interest of my Atma, so to say. So I'm clearly seeing that stockpile of desires seen in my Melton platform. So that's another way of speaking about that. Before that was not clear. I was so engrossed with that particular wave, so to say, so identified with my desires that I couldn't talk about them as material desires, but those were me, so to say. So in certain level of advancement, you start to make a difference between the two. No? And you can witness, so to say, witness those movements of the mind, so to say, without necessarily falling prey of them. No? So that, of course, in an even more advanced stage, you don't even witness them. They are absolutely gone in every sense of the term. But there's a way to say that's not going on here, especially considering what the verse is saying in the Sanskrit, which are saying sattvaika nishte manasi. So sattva ikanishte. So sattva, again, can mean Suddha sattva. And sattva, Suddha sattva means Swarup Shakti, basically. And Nishta, if it can be interpreted as Nishta per se, the stage of Nishta, and when we go to the attributes of the stage of Nishta, it doesn't mean that you are absolutely beyond all material desires and you no longer even perceive them because you are totally absorbed in Sudasattva to the utmost degree. That happens in Bhava Bhakti. No? Remember, Sudasattva Visheshatma, Prema Suryam Susamya Bhakti. That's how Rupa Goswami describes Bhava, like a ray of the sun of Prem, and Sudasattva Visheshatma. Your whole Atma becomes totally absorbed in Sudasattva, like implying before Bhava Bhakti, that's not the case. There is Sudasattva, there is an influence of Swarup Shakti, but not to that point. So we can make a case that this verse is mostly talking about that, mostly talking about Nishta, and in that case you say, okay, Nishta, that happens, that level of clarity happens. You are not totally free from material desires, but you can see them for what they are. So there is clarity of vision. Due to Nishta, due to fixity and determination of your practice, that provides a clear picture about what's going on in your inner landscape. And by making that definition, you can take some distance, so to say, or deal with that problem. You can witness, okay, this is a material desire. That's not me. That's the beginning of of clarity, so to say, because before that, again, we were fully engrossed in that. And we can make a more informed choice, so to say, no? By the strength of our own practice, already the momentum gained in Nishta and the clarity gained, you can perceive, okay, this is a material desire. This is not in the interest of my Atma. So with that informed choice, we can take the proper decisions and continue to nourish our bhakti. So that's how I will explain it on a more, again, micro cosmic level, or if not, again, another idea will be the macrocosmic interpretations when a devotee in certain level of fixity in Swarup Shakti has this, like witnesses, has this darshan of the conglomerate of material desire as it is, so to say. Now that makes me even think of some, I don't know, some Christian mystics, or not even Christian mystics, they were mystic that they kind of contact the heart of universal suffering, and they dedicate themselves to a life of prayer, being in touch with the pain that is happening in a more, again, conglomerate way, universal way. So they must have some perception of that. No, they are in touch, even if they are living in their own hermits or cells without reading newspapers and being informed about all the terrible things that some human beings go through or perpetrate. They contact that layer of reality, and from that place they act accordingly. So that's what is coming today. I don't know if it makes any sense, Paranda.
Yeah, I appreciate both you stepping back with the macrocosmic and then going into the microcosmic. I thought as you know by the question, I was thinking of it in the microcosmic because of the way he had presented the three sentences. In this section, he also in another purport, which I'm not going to look up just to share with you, he also says that sometimes the devotee sees in a dream or experiences the fulfillment of his desires in a dream, and he's therefore reducing the stockpile that way. Not that he has to experience them or go through them on the actual physical plane, but Krishna is helping him get rid of them in the subtle way, even through dreams.
Yeah, that's another, of course, consideration, and it even made me think, although it may not be the main emphasis in our tradition, but for example, Jiva Goswami speaks about that. Brihad Bhagavatam is also mentioned about this idea of Kram Mukti, where some people wants to go to transcendence, let's put it that way. They are heading toward the spiritual world, but also they have some desire to experience what's in between planet Earth and the spiritual world, so to say, and they want to visit some other higher regions, but their determination is to end their journey in transcendence, and that's legal, so to say. Again, it may not be the main emphasis in our school, but at least to know that that's considered in the Shastra, that's also interesting in terms of what sometimes we may call material desires and so on. Again, that's another separate conversation, because sometimes devotees get a little bit traumatized by the expression material desires, and by feeling I have material desires, I'm wrong, I shouldn't have material desires. And it may make the whole journey a little bit tortuous in a way that is not conducing to the actual ultimate goal that we are proposing. So, and I'm not saying with this, go on with your material desires, relax, no problem, but just probably what you think it's a material desire could be aligned with bhakti, and it's no longer a material desire. No, that's my main point. Not so much continue with your material desires and have a complete crazy lifestyle. I'm not saying that, but also do not create in your mind this dichotomy of material spiritual. Is if some of the things you are doing could be done with certain understanding and orientation in a way that is becomes part of bhakti, so to say, right? So just an added note to the whole topic. But thank you also for your adding, Pranada, and for a question. Okay, Rasangi, nice to see you.
So happy to see you and to hear you and to be with everybody.
Yeah.
I wanted to give you a little feedback about the retreat, if I could first. Is that okay?
Again, I didn't hear you.
I wanted to just give a little feedback about the retreat.
Which retreat?
The one you just did in Michigan.
Okay.
Just, I was so happy that you shared some of it that otherwise I would have felt left out. But having those to listen to gave me a feeling of like being involved. And I love the enthusiasm. I love the changes that people were reporting, Maharaj. They were really feeling transformed and enlivened. It was so wonderful. I love that. And there was humor. It was so nice. And what I especially loved, the class I liked so much, was about surrender, and how you reframed surrender. You reframed it from waving a white flag to a process of love, surrendering to love. And I just found it so helpful, because usually it feels like I'm defeated. I have to surrender, and I don't want to. I'm gripping on tight. And I love that you said that that one of the benchmarks of surrender is understanding that we're being maintained by the Lord out of his love. And that changes everything. And to take that in and let that be has been really wonderful for my heart. And so many things you said, you know, the how to identify when you surrender to a guru. You know, there should be really significant overflowing of heart and excitement and
wonder.
Like
Don't forget that word, wonder.
Yeah, the wonder. I love that wonder. I love that word. I love that word. Never forget that word.
Thank you.
Anyway, I'm so happy to have shared that. I recommend everybody listen to them. And you know, I'm studying still dualistic thinking, and this in the book on page 205, Richard Rohr's comment that the dualistic mind compares, competes, conflicts, conspires, condemns, cancels out any contrary evidence, and then crucifies with impunity.
The 7 C's.
Oh my God, that's so heavy.
Yeah, we are so heavy now.
And you know, I just wanted to say, like, your acceptance of the other mystical traditions is so freeing for me, because I hate sectarianism, and I don't want to look at things like that. I want to see a continuum, maybe a continuum, perhaps, but not like this separate, this thinking, and mine is better than yours, and we're the only one that's right. And in the Chaitanya Shikshamrita, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, you must know this, but the extinguishing of the forest fire.
Yeah.
That goes to represent
Sectarian mentality. Yeah. Quarreling among sampradayas, right?
fighting against the opinions of others, inner hatred toward other communities, disregard for the religious practices of others, battles and conflicts.
Watch out for that one.
Oh my God, I love it. I have so ways to go because I'm still.
That's samsara, right? That's interesting because we use samsara as a forest fire, and how Bhaktivinoda Thakur relates to forest fire. No, okay, this is a forest fire. This is samsara. We have to get out of.
Okay, so my question is, on going through your day, how do you recognize when you're thinking dualistically? How can we, you know what I mean? Like you were just saying, a lot of this is just me, and I think I'm right, and I'm intelligent, but dualistic thinking is such a not a helpful thing. It's so difficult and damaging to our bhakti. So how to identify it and root it out when it's happening?
Well,
how do I identify?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, thank you for all your words and your appreciation. I will say you yourself gave the answer in the question when you quoted Richard Rohr, and you shared it. I mean, he described these 7 stages, so to say, of the normal sequencing of the dualistic mind, right? So I will say that's how you start to detect, because what's the first one he mentioned? It compares. So whenever you start to compare yourself with others, no, he's better, he's worse, so this, I don't have this, they have that, if I only will reach there, instead of individuating yourself, self-acceptance, entering into Krishna's loving me unconditionally. No, I'm not enough, it's never enough. Comparison. Okay, the whole dualistic game is starting level 1. We have 7 levels, but level 1, comparison. No, and then comes competition, right? As he mentioned, dualistic mind compares, then it competes, no, because I want to have what they don't have, and I'm trying to take, and most of them out of a lack of self-love and self-esteem, and considering me like unworthy and empty, and I'm never enough. So, which is dualism again. I'm seeing myself as an empty, unworthy, unlovable entity outside of the connection with God, who loves me unconditionally. So for me, again, this is what, among many reasons why it's so important for me to establish this foundation in place. You are already fully accepted and loved by the divine, and that creates so much foundation of belonging, and that prevents so much dualistic thinking, because if you know yourself to be already loved by God and belonging to Him, that unity, that connection, that belongingness kind of prevents all dualism, all fragmentation, all fracture consciousness between, because everything belongs, quoting also Father Richard. So again, I will emphasize these 7 points of the sequence to pay attention, to be vigilant in our own minds about how dualistic thinking starts to happen. And to be good, again, it's a way of saying, of course, we can say so many things, but one of them is in a practical way, okay, comparison. No, I remember decades ago, I was reading one book on something called nonviolent communication, very interesting, by Marshall Rosenberg. And he will mention in that book, like, if you want to be in anxiety, you just need to do one thing: compare yourself to others. That's it. Not even in the sense of comparing, I want their car, I want their money, I want anything, but just comparing. Like, why comparing? Each one is its own unique individual. There's no need to compare. Yeah. If you want, you can compare yourself to yourself yesterday and today, so to say, to make some daily progress and growth. But compared to others, what's the point of that? Each one is in their own unique journey. So compare yourself to others is almost delusional. It puts us in a very disconnected situation, right? And it generally doesn't create this sense of we are all interconnected with the common center. The comparison game is more like fragmenting. Like, I'm here, you are there, we are different, it creates this pattern of fragmentation and further distance instead of unity. So again, comparison, competition, conflict. Then he goes, of course, conspiration, condemnation, cancellation, and crucifixion or whatever, crucifying. So condemning, no, basically condemning in the worst possible way, like killing the other person in your mind, or who knows, so many forms of abuse that all began with some form of comparison. And comparison again comes out of the lack of being established in your own self. If you are properly established in your own self, if you have healthy self-loving bhakti, and I know that I'm loved by Krishna and everyone else is as well, I don't need to compare myself to anyone. The actual question is why the need to compare comes, why the need for comparison comes. Again, because I feel I'm not enough, and I feel the need to look on the other side of the fence and probably feel the grass is greener on that other side. That's how it works again. And then I want to go to the other side, and I abandon my own self, and I stop my own individuation. And Krishna speaks about that in the Gita, in the 3rd verse, when he says, better you do your duty wrong than doing someone else's right. That's basically the individuation verse, if you want to put it that way. He's very clearly saying, do not compare. Pay attention to your own journey and appreciate everyone else, but no, without the need of comparison. So that's one way of putting it. I will try to emphasize that particular way of answering to the question. But yeah, in general, dualistic mind sees things in like separate, right? It doesn't see wholes, no? But sees like parts that are kind of dismembered one from the other, right? That's what also the quote that I shared from Father Richard says, that, no, like a dualistic people live in a fragmented world. They do not see things integrated, but they relate to people and things as isolated realities within their own orbits, and that creates so much separatedness, no, and conflict and so on and so forth. So I will emphasize that we have to, in our daily relationships, try to heal that fragmentation, no, in how we relate with ourselves, as I was mentioning now, proper self-love, proper self-care, how we relate to other people by seeing them for who they are, not only in terms of comparing them to me, no, because that can happen. Eventually we can relate to people only in comparison to us, and I'm not seeing the other person. If I only relate to you contrasting who you are in relation to who am I'm just using you for the sake of comparison, and that's not you, and that's not me either. So so we are creating a whole fictional set of characters there. So how we relate with others, how we relate with ourselves, how we relate with Krishna, how we relate with this world, and try to, in our practice, in our bhajan, in our meditation, prayer, chanting, trying to enter that space of oneness in a healthy way, of non-duality. Again, goes back to non-dual foundation. Advaya Gyan Tattva Devatan said, reality is non-dual. There's no separatedness in existence. Krishna is not seeing separatedness, and as the previous verse of the Bhagavatam and the Prana that came brought us, we have to see reality as God sees reality. Wow, that's a challenge. Doesn't mean you become God, but just empathize with God's glance over everything, how he's looking at us, how he's looking at everyone through the eyes of unconditional love. And ultimately, that's what the Bhagavatam verse means that we mentioned before. Try to see everything in the way God sees it. Okay, he sees everything through the eye of unconditional love. There's no duality for him because he sees that through that. So, but yeah, in practical terms, it's start from that place, no? Let's relate to one another as family. We're all one big family. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Yeah, that's what comes now.
As you were talking, I was thinking it's so opposite of connection. We want to see connection. We want to see the way things are connected quite beautifully and interestingly and amazingly. Perhaps we can see that wonder, right? without canceling out and saying neti, neti, no, no, no. We
Mhm.
have to be able to see the way it connects.
Yeah.
Love
Yeah.
that. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. Om. Yes.
Om.
That's what, as I like to say these last days, as you already know. One of the names of Krishna is yes. Om. Om means yes in Sanskrit.
A big yes.
Mm-hmm. So it's a confirmation. It's a positive kick start. No, reality has to kick start with a yes. So yes means accepting that everything belongs, everything is part, everything is interconnected, everything is orbiting around God's unconditional love, whether we know it or not.
Mm.
And then try to build your lifestyle accordingly to that basic orientation to reality. So that shatters dualism to the very core, right? Because dualism is based on the opposite: fragmentation, division, comparison, and so much fear, as the Bhagavatam say, bhayam dvitiya viniveshatasya. From duality, from absorption in duality, fear comes. And from fear, we do all the nonsense we do on a daily basis. And all these wars and violence and thievery and killing, and all that come from fear, actually. All that come from a sense of not belonging, insecurity, perceiving enemies, attacking, defense mechanisms, imminent danger, blah, blah, blah. Fear. We are terrified. Even if out on the outside we seem like bold, very courageous people, we are trembling inside. So because still we hold the dualistic framework. So we feel I don't belong, or someone else does not belong, and that someone else needs to be annihilated because it's a threat to me. So we start to create this. I mean, that's how the Gita starts, right? Pandavas mamakas chaiva, kima kurva to Sanjaya. Dhritarashtra is asking the very first verse of the Gita to Sanjaya, what did my sons and the sons of Pandu did? Now, so he's created this fragmentation. Now, Dhritarashtra should see the Pandavas as his own sons, because Pandu died, and he should, according to natural, not only Vedic tradition, but common sense, the sons of your brother becomes your own sons, so to say. You adopt them, but he keeps that dichotomy, you know? They're them and us and them, basically. That's the first verse of the Gita, us and them. Duality, and duality creates Kurukshetra, creates a battlefield, creates war, creates division, creates all that stuff. So the whole Gita is about bringing back that sense of union, no? Like canceling that separatedness that inaugurates the narrative and bringing back to the union of love. And that's why every single chapter of the Gita is called yoga, right? Vishada yoga, karma yoga, jnana yoga, sankhya yoga, bhakti yoga, virat rupa darshan yoga, etc. It's all about union, no? Reunion. Instead of the separatedness that the book starts with, setting the pattern of how our dualistic mind works. Okay, now let's go to proper union. And that's the attempt of the whole Gita, basically. So yeah, that's the journey we have to go through. So here we are, happy to be on the journey with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Maharaj. That was awesome. And there's one other thing, what you did with surrender.
Awesome. That's a very important word that sometimes we take for granted. Awesome.
I
But
know. I heard that.
awe includes awe, right? Awe and wonder. Like
Awesome.
wondersome or wonderful. We have wonderful. No, it's full of wonder, or awesome. But I'm
Awesome.
saying that because a devotee the other day told me that after the class on Sharanagati and wonder, say, we use this word awesome so
Too much.
loosely, or wonderful, but actually it implies these sacred things, awe and wonder. So we have to reclaim those words in their deepest meaning.
We could say awe-inspiring instead, maybe awe-inspiring. But
Yeah, I'm okay with awesome. It's okay.
I'd love to see what you can do with suffering, turn it around the way you did with surrender, and make suffering a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
You know, to make that more acceptable and out of love. I'd love to hear that sometime.
I mean, for now you're saying, or another moment?
I know I don't want to go on another time.
Okay. Next meeting we'll talk on that.
Love that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's an important point.
Oh,
Pain and wonder. Know how much we can reconcile the two of them. Yeah, thank you. So I'll go to the next question or comment or contribution from Ruchir. So you can unmute yourself, please.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yeah, Dandava.
I have a question. Like I had another question actually, but after this discussion from Rasangi Mataji, something new
Yeah,
come to
it
my mind.
happens like that usually. Yeah.
So I want to ask this one now. So you mentioned about comparison that we are not supposed to like. Ideally, we shouldn't compare with the others, and because we are part of the same family, and yeah. But like I heard some of the songs from Bhakti Vinod Thakur, Narottam Das, they are singing that, like they are not that devotee that like they completed their life, but they have not prayed to Radha Krishna. And so I think that they might be comparing themselves to some higher personalities and then singing this song. And also like there is a saying that who is the devotee of the Lord, the person who is a devotee of the devotee. So in that way also, like we must be appreciating something in the other devotee, that we are becoming their devotee, right? So in that I feel like we are still comparing, or we are seeing something in them that is missing, and then we are trying for that, or like aspiring to have that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for the question. And again, I think that the answer to the question is in the question itself, because you use this important word appreciation. So you were mentioning that, okay, we are supposed to become devotees of the devotees, and that comes out of appreciation again, or awe and wonder, whatever word we want to use. I won't say it's so much comparison in that case. It's not like when I use the word comparison here, is I try to clarify from which place we shouldn't compare to each other, no? Like trying to imitate, trying to dismiss my own duties, my own dharma, so to say, trying to stop my own process of individuation and trying to be the other person. That's not healthy. Now, that's not the same as following in the footsteps of someone or being inspired by someone. In Sanskrit, we have these two terms, anukar and anusar. So anukar means to imitate, to do what the other person is doing, which is not recommended, just external imitation. And out of maybe comparison, who knows? And anusar means to follow. Sometimes it's translated as following the footsteps of the other person, but anusar, sar means essence. So anusar means to follow the essence of what that person is transmitting, which doesn't mean I will imitate that person. It means I will be inspired by that essence. As you say, I will appreciate that, and I will integrate that in my own process, in my own unique way, because I'm not the other person. So I don't need to compare myself to someone. Someone may be inspiring in my life. Someone may be, hopefully, we may have like role models of reference. But also there's a fine line between these two, again, because I've seen that a lot. Sometimes we, in the name of being inspired with someone, we are trying to become that person. And that's escapism. Now we are using unconsciously, without any bad conscious intention, but we are unconsciously escaping from the responsibility of becoming ourselves. And we are just trying to copy paste the other person, how the person talks, how the person walks, how the person dresses and eats and everything. And instead of saying, I have to become my own person, so to say, nourished by the inspiration coming from this person. So that's very important. And we've seen that in our tradition and in any other tradition. The real actual saints and enlightened beings are not like, how to say, depersonalized guys that are always all the same, saying the same thing, walking the same way. That doesn't happen. You compare Srila Prabhupada to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur to Bhaktivinoda Thakur. They were not the same person. They were not doing the same things. One was Grihastha, that was sannyasi, the other was sannyasi and then Grihastha and then sannyasi, and that's not only, of course, the only way to determine they are different. in how they live, how they pray, how they express, how they think, differences of opinion. But all of them were nourishing from the other person, were inspired, but they were not comparing themselves to each other. So I would say that in the prayers that you referred to, where some personality like Bhaktivinoda Thakur or Narottam Das Thakur may, I wouldn't say they are comparing themselves to other people. They are just bringing to their minds and to their memory the example and inspiration that received from someone, and in a particular spirit of humility, maybe lamenting that they have not fully imbibed the essence of what that person is representing. But I don't think they are comparing themselves like to them, like I have to be you, no? But just you represent this in my life, and you bring to my life this beautiful gift and potential, and I'm realizing, let's say, I'm realizing I'm not doing all that I could do to honor that gift and potential. So I lament in that moment, in that place. No? So there's place for that, but I wouldn't call that I wouldn't compare that to the comparison that I referred to before, which comes out of the sense of emptiness and unworthiness, where I'm escaping from becoming myself. That's the type of ideas that I refer to when I spoke about comparison. No, when I see myself as a, again, separate, isolated unit, very poorly. I see myself very empty, very yeah, basically that. So I wouldn't say that these great personalities are promoting comparison, but mostly promoting healthy individuation, healthy becoming of all that we can be, and being open to nourishment and inspiration and influenced, of course, but that doesn't do away with the fact that we have to individuate. We have to develop all our sense of personality as an offering to Krishna. And Krishna wants to taste our full individuated personality. No, he doesn't want us being half-baked in terms of personality, like half impersonal and half personal. He wants us to be radically personal because he is radically personal. So he only had a taste for that, so to say. So yeah, that's how I will understand it. No, in this particular prayers, there is some healthy lamentation, but on the basis of appreciation, as you mentioned. So appreciation is very different with comparison. No, let's try to think many of the times that we compare each other with other people, and it's not from a healthy place of appreciation and inspiration, and I feel myself receiving so many gifts and that's empowering me. All that is appreciation. No, comparison is more like a mind game of unworthiness and calculation, and actually not feeling a gift, but a feeling a lacking on me. So it's very self-centered, and it's very centered on me being, again, never enough, disconnected from everything else, seeing the qualities of other people like threats to me because I see myself so empty. So I need to fight against that. So it's very different from genuine appreciation of qualities that I witness, and I feel, okay, they are not threatening me. They are not a threat. They're actually a gift. No? And I think this is an important point, and it's probably all of us are struggling with that on some level or another. Hopefully not, but probably, which is, to give an example, in Gaudiya Vaishnava circles, on other circles, we may meet people who are very qualified or very inspiring with lots of attributes and knowledge and purity and devotion. So we have two options there, many, but let's boil down to two. One is, I feel nourished by that. I feel, okay, I'm so fortunate and grateful that Krishna allows me to have this association that is inspiring and nourishing me. Or I enter into the comparison game of, oh, I'm not like him. I don't have that purity. I don't have that knowledge. And therefore, I'm less than him, and I should have all that. And I'm not really loving that person and feeling a gift and appreciating. I'm just freaking out out of a sense of emptiness. So it's the same situation. In one, I can feel totally again, empowered and gifted and blessed. And with the same situation, I can feel myself threatened and in danger, and I need to, I don't know, criticize or cancel the other things so I don't feel so miserable about myself. So because of this, it's so important that we have a healthy self-perception, self-love, again, as we have been talking recently. So whenever I find something that is beautiful, that is even, if you will, higher than myself, I can accept that as a blessing that is coming to nourish me, no, and not as a threat that I need to put that down so I remain on the top, because I see myself so poorly that I need to make everyone else disappear so I don't see myself as miserably. Something. So many of those things happen sometimes in how we relate to one another, especially if we are in a circle of people that many times we will meet very qualified people. We need to know how to deal with that in a way that we don't feel threatened or depressed or start this comparison game and try to disqualify one another, and actually feel the bliss and the gift coming. So, but thank you for your question. I hope that helps, and it's clear the difference between, in this case, comparison and appreciation.
Yeah, Maharaj. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we have one more hand raised, and I think that will be, enough for today, because also I have some other commitments here. I have a program later and some other things. So we'll go to Madhav. You have your hand raised. You can unmute yourself, please.
Hare
Nice to
Krishna
see you.
Maharaj.
Nandavad, nice to see you.
So Maharaj, I had this question. These are two questions that are more or less connected.
Okay, I'm
So
not.
basically,
I'm
in
hearing you
Bhakti Rasamrita
interrupted. Yeah.
Sindhu, there is this whole discussion on the various.
Are
So
I
in Bhakti Rasamrita
experience?
Sindhu, the various limbs of bhakti are discussed.
Okay.
And there, what?
Yeah,
and
I'm
Rupa Goswami
experiencing
says
some
that.
interruption with your streaming. Sorry.
Okay, so basically, Rupa Goswami says that even a little relationship with any of the important primary limbs of bhakti, one can attain bhava.
Yeah.
So if all the limbs of bhakti are equally potent enough, then why is it that nama-sankirtan specifically is considered yuga-dharma? And the next question which follows is that in most Gaudiya communities, we have this sort of standard set, a certain number of rounds of japa, which becomes sort of like a central focus. But shouldn't bhakti then be more personalized, in the sense each and every individual devotee's inclination should be seen, which particular anga of bhakti they are more inclined to, and that should ultimately follow what should be their primary means of sadhana.
Yeah.
So this is.
Thank you. Thank you for both questions. So yeah, it's a classical question that sometimes comes. So on one side, we have in the Gaudiya Sampradaya this considerable emphasis, of course, on Harinam Sankirtan as the yuga-dharma. But at the same time, we find these statements in Shastra that of different devotees, even examples given by Rupa Goswami, attaining perfection through different limbs of bhakti, even limbs that you may think are not some of the main ones. Like, for example, when I always quote this one, when he's describing the main 64 angas or limbs of bhakti, one of them is dancing for Krishna. And he gives the example of Chandrakanti, who was a lady who danced a whole night for Krishna, and she attained spiritual world after that night. So it's like, okay, sounds like a good deal. So the point is that, I mean, she didn't, or again, Parikshit Maharaj, he attained perfection by Shravanam, by listening. Of course, there was kirtan in the form of his questions in the conversation with Sukadev Goswami. So for me also, this is connected with the idea of course, for when we say Sankirtan as the yuga-dharma, of course, Sankirtan also we can think of congregational chanting of the holy names, but also Sankirtan means full Samyak Kirtan, full praise of God. And interestingly, when the Bhagavatam, with Rupa Goswami is describing the different people who attain main perfection through different angas of bhakti, when it comes to kirtan, the example is Sukadeva Goswami. So Sukadeva Goswami is a kirtanakya acharya, no? The guru or the acharya who shows the perfection of kirtan, but he's not doing kirtan in terms of playing instruments. He's speaking Bhagavat. He's giving Harikatha. That's kirtan. So, so my point with this is, we emphasize kirtan, but what's kirtan? It's not only take the mridangam kartals and that's kirtan. No? Speaking Harikatha is kirtan. No? Sharing Q&As, ISTAGOSTHI, guru-disciple, or between sincere sangha, brothers and sisters, that's also kirtan. In a broad sense, kirtan is praise. So sankirtan is full praise. So we could make a case for, I mean, I have nothing against congregational chanting of the names of Krishna, just in case. And I chant my japa and all everything is in place in one sense, hopefully. But at the same time, there is place for a broad interpretation of the term kirtan or sankirtan. And that may encompass full praise of God in the form of listening, in the form of dancing, in the form of doing all the other angas of bhakti, which takes you to attain perfection. So that's on one side. At the same time, we could say each age has a particular yuga-dharma, as we know. And for each different age, certain practices recommended. Also considering the general adhikar of the audience, so to say, right? So we hear like, okay, in Satya Yuga, dhyana or meditation is the yuga-dharma because people have this disposition where they can be just meditating all day, basically. No, all there are hamsas described in Shastra. There are no social orders. All of them have this greater capacity for mental absorption and just sitting and doing that 24/7, basically. So my point is, and each one of the yuga-dharmas in each age is tied to the capacities of people. No? So it's not so much to say that one anga is superior to the other necessarily, but that in each age there is a certain predominant mood, and there is a corresponding practice that somehow gives a chance of attaining perfection. This because of that qualification, or despite the lack of qualification, if we talk about Kali Yuga, right? So that's for me a main point here. The Bhagavatam says, Kalir dosha nidhe rajan astihi ek mahaguna kirtana deva krishnasya mukta sangha param brajet. So it says, once like Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults. Kalir dosha nidhe, it's an ocean of defects. So with that line, it sets the stage of what's the qualification of Kali Yuga. The qualification of Kali Yuga is disqualification. That's a qualification in itself. We are so unqualified that puts us in a very humble place to pray for very special mercy that we will say that's the one coming from Mahaprabhu. So that's our qualification, that we are unqualified. To acknowledge our lack of adhikar is our adhikar. So then it says what? But despite such a lack of qualification, such an ocean of faults, if you engage in kirtan, you attain all perfection, basically. So my point is, Sankirtan is a very user-friendly practice, no? In the sense it doesn't require too much qualification like the previous yuga-dharmas, like for just meditating internally, non-stop, or even worshiping the deity or executing different complex rituals which may require some scars and qualification. Sankirtan, you can just join it. No, everyone, anyone, any place, situation. So it's very easy, very accessible, very user friendly, and very powerful. Again, because of something being easy doesn't mean it's less powerful. But the emphasis, I will say, on Sankirtan, of course, on Mahaprabhu is emphasizing that himself and so on. Is because of how simple and user-friendly and equally powerful it is as other practices. But considering, again, in general, the lack of qualification in Kali Yuga is this. So you can practice nama-sankirtan, which is so easy and accessible, and attain all perfection. Of course, with certain guidance and sincerity and so on and so forth. But for me, that doesn't do away the fact that someone may find more affinity to some other practice of bhakti, and be qualified to engage in it, despite Kali Yuga's general disqualification, and attain full perfection in that as well. You follow my point? So I agree with that. I agree that every person is an individual. Again, if you go back to radical personalism, I agree with every person is an individual, and there will be a particular call and inclination to serve Krishna in one way or another. And some people may find that their specific inclination in seva is, again, kirtan, shravan, smaran, artanam, dasin, sakyam, atmaniveda, and so on. So many angas of bhakti are there. In general, of course, Nam is a center for us. It's a center in Kali Yuga. It's a center for Mahaprabhu. So generally, it's present there in one way or another, despite we may have some main anga that we may be drawn to. So I will personally be open to different possibilities of that, no? And that's why also Sanatana Goswami says we have Hari Bhakti Vilas, you mentioned the number of rounds chanted, that sometimes that's kind of standardized. But actually, Sanatana Goswami, Hari Bhakti Vilas says the number of rounds that one chants has to be arranged between guru and disciple. I'm not saying that everything else is wrong. I'm just saying what Sanatana Goswami is saying, for us to know that's a possible, that hints at this idea of guru and disciple are ideally working personally, so the guru knows, okay, who is my disciple, who is his or her affinity, inclination, mood, situation, adhikar. So we can like figure out a sadhana that is sustainable for you, nourishing for you, that you can identify with, and so on. And so it's like it's specific, so to say. And in time that can be adjusted even according to the development in bhakti. Again, for me, it's common sense. Uncommon common sense. So I agree with that. I agree that some devotees may feel, and I know devotees who are hyper advanced, and most of them chant their japa, for example, and that's again a whole other conversation, because you can say, I've seen devotees sometimes say, okay, nama-sankirtan is the yuga-dharma, but actually that's not, if we can make a difference, if you want, between that and japa also. And sometimes I've seen devotees overemphasizing a number of japa, but maybe they don't do any nama-sankirtan in terms of congregational chanting. So you can say, well, but if you want to take it in that literal way, nama-sankirtan is the congregational chanting of the holy name. So chanting japa is not the same. So you follow my point? So that creates this particular situation where I've seen devotees being very strict about 16 rounds per day or even 64 rounds per day, but no nama-sankirtan. And again, I'm not criticizing that. I'm just saying how we are processing each of these ideas. And I'm not saying someone who does not do congregational chanting, but only does japa, is not getting perfection or is not as advanced. I'm not saying that. But I'm not saying either the opposite. Someone may have a call to deep japa, or I know very advanced devotees who were so engaged in Guru Seva that for one reason or another, they didn't chant japa. Or I know, and I won't mention names, but I think I mentioned that once, of a very advanced devotee who realized her Swarup, Sita Swarup, her spiritual identity, and she will chant 1 round per day. So again, it's not just like, this is the formula, this is the only way to do it. Because sometimes I hear devotees saying that thing. Only if you chant 16, or I've heard recently someone was telling me, if you don't chant 64 rounds, you cannot get to Golok Vrindavan, sorry. And we make it so formulaic and so like exclusive. And generally when I say those things, I'm doing those things probably. No, when we say only if you chant 64 rounds you get to Golok, and yeah, I'm chanting 64 rounds, so I'm there, or I'm going there. It creates this type of elitism, no? So when we pay attention in detail, we see that there are so many devotees practicing in so many ways. Mahaprabhu's associates, they express their devotion in so many ways, and each of them is beautiful and perfect. No? So I'm more again, I try to be a radical personalist. So I'm more of, okay, let's pay attention to the specific case, what works for you. And for me, it goes back to this main important verse, Smarta Vyasatatam Vishnu, that I quoted before. Now, always absorb yourself in Krishna, never forget him. All the rules and regulations that exist are to nourish that particular principle, implying whatever works better for you in this connection may not be the same thing that works better for you. So we need to, yeah, it's important to talk about it on an individual level, and each one may find their place in bhakti, so to say, right? So yeah,
That's right.
that's what comes today in that connection. So thank you so much, Madhav, for your
Thank you.
question. I hope that helps.
Thanks.
And thank you so much to all of you for being connected. And before we leave, a brief reminder and also something that comes to my mind. Again, next Saturday, unfortunately, I won't be able to connect because it will be the exact same time that the Rath Yatra is starting here in New York. So I'll be participating in that. So we'll meet again for ISTAGOSTHI in 2 weeks. But also we will be starting next Tuesday or Thursday? Tuesday. Next Tuesday, we'll be starting in the context of our Tadatmya lectures. This will be a monthly presentation. All the following Tuesdays of June, I will be talking about evolution in divine love, which I already talked a little bit about that one Sunday a few weeks ago. So this will be also part of a trailer of the book I'm writing in terms of how the nature of love is ever evolving, and therefore the nature of God is in constant unfolding, an ongoing process, and our own potential in the same way, and the importance of learning to see life and reality as a permanent unfolding instead of a fixed substance, so to say. So I think it will be an exciting conversation we can have. So if you want to participate, it will be every Tuesday of June, and there is a link I've been sharing in my social media these days that you have to click and subscribe to be able to get the Zoom information. So hopefully we can see, despite we're not seeing each other next Saturday, hopefully we can see this coming Tuesday in the morning and the coming Tuesdays of the month. And if not, again, see you in 2 weeks for another ISTAGOSTHI, or see you somehow or other. You will see me. I won't see you for the lectures we'll be sharing these days here in New Jersey. So thank you so much to all of you again for your presence and Sangha and friendship and sincerity. Hope to see you soon. Srimad Mahaprabhu ki jai. Sachinandan Gaur Hari ki jai. Harinam Prabhu ki jai. Shri Shri Gaur Nityananda Gaur Gadadhar Ju ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan Radha Govinda Dev Radha Gopinath Ju ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premanand Hari Hari Bol. Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha. Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namo.